Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay from SonyAlphaLab. And look what I have here, the Sony A6000 and the Sony Nex 6 side by side. On the A6000 here right in front of us now, I have the 18 to 105 G lens. And here looking at the back, on the Nex 6, I have the 55 to 210 millimeter lens. Note the body differences. The Nex 6 has a beveled edge, and the A6000 does not. The A6000 has hard corners here. See that? More like the A7 or Nex 7 for that matter. Also note how the mode dial and control wheel are separated on the A6000. They're side by side, similar to how the Nex 7 had the TriNavi setup, except it's not TriNavi. All right, so moving on to the actual comparison here, side by side, we have 24 megapixel versus 16 megapixel on the Nex 6. We have killer hybrid AF on the A6000 versus decent hybrid AF on the Nex 6. So if you don't need super accurate action shots, then the Nex 6 will be just fine for you. The camera body on the A6000 is definitely better. It's a metal alloy versus the rugged plastic on the Nex 6. Image quality, they're both great. The Nex 6 might have a slight edge in color rendition and dynamic range, but it's really close in the real world. It's hard to tell. On top of that, we have the EVF. They're virtually identical. It's lower resolution on the A6000, but I honestly cannot tell. They look the same to me. LCD screen, they're both great. Size-wise, the A6000 is a little bit larger than the Nex 6, but not by much. Moving on to prices, we pretty much have $600 versus $480 for the body only right now. The Nex 6 might drop in price soon, even more, but currently that's what we got. And then we got $748 versus $524 with the kit lens, which it's the 16 to 50 millimeter kit lens, which is pretty versatile, but not the best optically, in my opinion. All right, so now we're going to do some focus testing, and we'll do some real world inside the lab tests first, and then I'll do some outside stuff and show you the images and the difference in speed. All right, so here's the A6000. Very fast. Alright, so there's the target, and I'll go to the lights. There's the lights. Target. Lights. Target. Alright, so let me try the Nex 6 and see how that stands out. Alright, so this is the Nex 6. Doesn't seem to be able to get those lights back there. Look at that. I'm using the center focus. That's fine. There it is. Really struggled with the lights. So compared to the A6000, definitely not as good. The center weight focus, noticeable difference here. Noticeable difference in the lab, low light. F4, it's ISO 1250 is what I'm seeing on the ISO 2000 that time, so it's definitely low light. Just using the center point focus. Alright guys, let's go into Lightroom and I'll show you some high-res images and sample photos, real-world lab, all that, high ISO, and so you can see for yourself just how good the A6000 performs compared to the Sony Nex 6. Alright guys, so here we are in Lightroom 5 and I just wanted to give you a closer look of some of these files here. So first I might as well just go to the raw file because we were just doing the autofocus test. So let me show you what a shot from inside the lab looks like. And you can see that the cameras do render the scene slightly different in the color department. The A6000 seems more natural in colors, a little less saturated as far as raw files are concerned. So if we zoom in to the penny, All right, you can see how that looks. I used the 18 to 105 lens again, so you're seeing that sharpness at f8. Quick test there. Now the penny is going to look a little bit bigger on the A6000 because of the higher resolution. So you get a little more detail there. See that? See the difference? And you can see the A6000 is a little less saturated. The colors are a little bit more towards Fuji, I guess. So it does look like they changed something. All right, so moving on to the high ISO, let me just zoom in here and show you what that looks like. This is ISO 25,000. So you can really get a good idea of what the camera is capable of doing, what the sensor is capable of doing. This is the Nex 6 first. All right, and here is the A6000. Let me get over to the same spot. So that's the Nex 6, and I'll just pan down a little bit. That's the A6000. So you could see the Nex 6 seems to have more of a red color versus a slight greener color on the A6000. Zoomed in at 100%, you can see the detail is very good in both. I mean, you can still read, you know, the letters and stuff like that. There's more detail though in the 24 megapixel sensor. So in that regard, it's a little bit better. If I go to 2:1, you can get a little better look. The individual pixels there. And you can see how good it does with black and white. Let me zoom in on this one here. See, it does a pretty good job. This is the A6000. You can see a little bit of purple there coming through. And I don't see that on the Nex 6 at all. See that? No purple. And I do see a little bit of purple there at 2:1. All right, so let's go on to the real world. Here is the Nex 6. And if you look at the Nex 6 versus the A6000, you could see the color difference. Again, the A6000 is a little more subtle in the colors. The Nex 6 is much more saturated right off the camera. These are raw files. So there's been nothing done to them straight off the camera. So, and then when I zoom in, show you the detail. Do a shift tab there so you can go full screen. This is the A6000 detail. We're looking at it 2:1. Let me go back to 1:1. That's better. Let's see a little bit better there. See that? It's pretty good. The focus hit more on this flower on the A6000. If I go to the Nex 6, the focus is a little bit more on this flower, it looks like to me. Maybe not. It's like the depth of field is just slightly different where the sharpness is, that's all. But overall image quality, I mean, it's so close. Like I said, the colors are a little bit different. You can see the color rendition. But overall quality, I mean, they're both excellent in my opinion. So let me show you some focus testing. Here we are, we're looking at a sequence from the Sony Nex 6. So I'm just gonna go through the sequence, and I was on continuous focus mode, high speed priority, and auto exposure, auto white balance. I actually had the ISO on 400 to make sure the shutter speed was fast enough. And I was using the 70 to 200 millimeter f4G lens. So you can see this first one's a little bit soft. This next one here is sharp. This one looks sharp. That one looks pretty good. That's getting soft. That's pretty much the only thing I got from the Nex 6 that was good. There was about another 20-30 shots that were no good. All right. So out of the A6000, I got a lot more usable shots. And you can see this one here went dark. It's nice and sharp though. So the exposure's a little bit all over the place, but you could see with this extremely hard test, I mean, I was zoomed in all the way. The depth of field was extremely shallow. That's why I did this test, because I knew the depth of field would be super shallow, and it would be very, very hard for the camera to track. Even a DSLR, a real DSLR with a mirror would have a very hard time tracking in this situation. So this is very impressive is the bottom line for the A6000. The Nex 6 did a decent job. It did as good as I would expect it to do. It didn't really get any when she was riding towards me, but as she was making a turn, I was able to get a few. So that's pretty much that. And here's a few more snapshots I took with the A6000. Layla picked up that flower and she's like, "Daddy, look." And I just looked up and I saw she was going to blow it. So I just raised the camera. I didn't even have the camera up. I had it down like on my side. And I just raised it up and pointed and took the picture. And it came out, I'll show you 100% here what it looks like. It came out really good. I was very impressed with the result, especially how fast the camera focused. Like I said, I just raised it from my hip and fired because I didn't want to miss it. You know, I figured anything was better than nothing. And it came out great. I did edit this picture a little bit, so it has a little sharpening. All right, so the next thing I wanted to show you was I have an article on my website, too, that goes over the Sony A6000 versus the Sony Nex 6. So this chart is here for your reference and all that. And I got a bunch of sample photos and stuff, you know, so you can see them closer. Sometimes it's better than the video. So I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that was available. And that's on my website, SonyAlphaLab.com. Now, moving on, we have the Sony A6000 versus the Sony Nex 6 versus the Sony Nex 7. Now this is a website called dxomark.com, and they have a scientific way of rating stuff. They have special equipment that can really analyze a lot more technically and advanced than I can. And they rate sensors, and they also rate lenses, do other things like that. So you can see here, if you look at the Nex 6 versus the A6000, it's 78 versus 82 overall score. And you can see the color bit depth is actually a little bit bigger on the A6000. The EVs are the same, and the low light ISO is much higher on the A6000. All right, and then if you look at the Nex 7, the ISO is actually about the same as the Nex 6, which it's just because of the higher resolution. But the dynamic range is larger. So the Nex 7 actually had a larger dynamic range than both the Nex 6 and the A6000. And color bit depth is the same, 24.1, 24.1. And the overall score is 81 on the Nex 7. So it went up 1 point, the A6000. So it's 1 point better than the Nex 7. So it is definitely a replacement for the Nex 6 and Nex 7. You could see the numbers, you know, as far as IQ-wise, image quality-wise, the numbers are pretty clear. All right, guys, so in the end, we have two great cameras, basically. The A6000 is newer. It's got the better body, metal alloy, and faster autofocus, higher resolution sensor, and it also has significantly better video. So if you're doing a lot of video and you want better quality, the A6000 is worth the upgrade just for the better video, in my opinion. If you're not interested in video at all, then only the autofocus is really what you're after. If you don't need a fast autofocus, then it's not worth the upgrade at all. The higher resolution is nice, but it's certainly not necessary. 16 megapixel is enough. So image quality is about the same in the real world, other than the resolution, in my opinion. Alright, so coming up next, I got the 70-200 full frame E-mount lens that's going to be tested on the A6000 and the A7R. So have a great day and stay tuned.